Welcome back, fans, to the ECHL Insider. I am your host, Garrett Hunter, excited to talk more Kelly Cup playoff action with you today. Lots of surprising scores from around the league about halfway through this round one. So let's dive into these scores. Before we start, I want to make sure everyone knows these scores and highlights I'm giving you today go through Monday, April 24th. So let's go ahead and dive in. We'll start with the North Division. The Reading Royals are up in the series 2-1 on the Maine Mariners. They were up 2-0 before Monday's thrilling overtime victory for the Mariners. And on now Tuesday night, Mariners have a chance to tie the series at home. What a thrilling series it has been. Mariners had a rough game one, but they've seemed to have bounced back now, only down one game in the series. The Newfoundland Growlers and Adirondack Thunder, 2-1 right now for the Growlers. And the first 3 games of this series were in Adirondack. Adirondack won game 1 on a great offensive performance, but were blown out in games 2 and 3. So Tuesday's game was rescheduled due to weather conditions on the way up to St. John's. So game 4 now will take place Thursday night in St. John's, Newfoundland, and so will the rest of the series in the Growlers Arena. So for the Adirondack Thunder now, you have to win 3 out of the 4 games now on the road if you want to win this series. So it'd be some big-time hockey for the Thunder if they can win this series and come back, but it is only 2-1 Growlers lead. Let's go to the South Division, where both series are tied. We'll start with the Stingrays and Everblades series. Both games were shutout wins. Florida took game 1, 5-0. South Carolina took game 2, 4-0. So big-time hockey for these two teams, blowing each other out, actually. But the series is tied 1-1. A lot of good offense in this series, which we expected that. But pay attention now as the series shifts back to Estero, that the Everblades start to build a lead in this series. What a great home crowd they have, and all time they are one of the best ECHL teams at home. So I think that'll be a big help for them as this series goes into games 3, 4, and 5. Also, the Jacksonville Icemen and Greenville Swamp Rabbits tied 1 game apiece. The Jacksonville Icemen took game 2 in double overtime. What a thrilling game that was. Little bit of review for that overtime goal for the Icemen, but it was confirmed a goal for the Icemen, and they tied the series. Now Tuesday night will be game 3 in the Bon Secours Wellness Arena for the Swamp Rabbits and Icemen. Expect this game to be very close, just like the other 2, but I did pick the Jacksonville Icemen to win this series, so I still stand by that pick. I think they will find a way to edge the Greenville Swamp Rabbits in this series. Let's go to the Central Division now, where both series, unlike the South Division, are 2-0 for both the Ohio teams. So we'll start with the Indy Fuel and Toledo Walleye. Fuel have just not found a good offense through 2 games in the Huntington Center. Now with the series switching back to the Indiana Farmers Coliseum, we'll see what they can do, if they can even or take a lead in the series with the next 3 games at home. But I've been really impressed with the goaltending by Toledo. They have made it very hard for the Indy Fuel to get any goals, really, in this series. We'll see how John Letherman and Sebastian Cosa mine the nets for the Toledo Walleye, and if the Walleye are able to wrap up the series this week. Finally, in the Central Division, the Fort Wayne Komets and Cincinnati Cyclones. What a series this has been just through 2 games. Through 2 periods of the first period in game 1, the Fort Wayne Komets had a 3-0 lead on the Cyclones. Personally, watching that game, I thought it was all over, but you can never count Cincinnati out. They came back, tied the game at 3 apiece, and then went on to win game 1 in overtime 4-3. Then they took game 2 also at home. So now the series will switch back to Fort Wayne, see if the Komets can get a win in this series. They all felt like they had game 1 locked up, but the Cyclones came back and won it. So now Fort Wayne can't be discouraged. They got to keep going. They know they have a good offense. They know they have a good defense. they got to just put it all together in Game 3 and finally get on the board in that series. Final division, the Allen Americans and Kansas City Mavericks. What a thrilling Game 3 it was on Monday night. The Americans took a 1-0 overtime victory, and this was one of the series where the first 3 games were at Kansas City. Now the rest of the series will be in Allen, so Allen will go home for the rest of the series, and they take a 2-1 lead going home. So big time series here for Allen and Kansas City. I really think Kansas City, like, obviously they have not had a lot of playoff games in the last few seasons, so their fan base is just excited to be in the playoffs, but they want to move on. They think they have a good enough defense, especially in goaltending. Shane Starrett, boy, was he good in Game 3, but his offense wasn't able to get it done. So if the offense can step it up for the Mavericks, I think they have a chance to come back in this series and take down the Allen Americans. And finally, but most surprising, the Utah Grizzlies and Idaho Steelheads. The Utah Grizzlies have a 2-0 lead in this series. I don't think anyone expected this. The first 2 games in Idaho, the Utah Grizzlies and Trent Miner held the Steelheads to 0 goals in the first 100 minutes of this series. Through 2 periods in Game 2, it was 1-0 Utah in Game 2, and they shut out the Steelheads 3-0 in Game 1. The Grizzlies would go on to win 3-2 in Game 2, and now the series will switch back to Utah. Game 3, I think, will be huge for the Steelheads. If they're going to come back in this series, almost have to win Game 3, and the next 3 games will be in Utah. So if you think about it, the Utah Grizzlies only have to win 2 of the next 3 at home, and they will defeat the Idaho Steelheads, Brabham Cup winners, in just the first round. When I watched those first 2 games, it just seemed like Idaho's offense was not themselves. They just seemed a little bit off with every pass, every shot. Good pressure at times, but just not consistent, not as lethal as they've been all regular season. So we'll see if they can get their groove back in Game 3. But road environment now for the Idaho Steelheads. 3 in a row at Utah. Almost have to win all of those to get back into this series. Well, we hope you enjoyed this series update in round 1. Please subscribe to our channel, tell all your ECHL friends about us, and we'll see you next week to wrap up round 1.
Keeps it again at the right point. Tim Doherty down low to Hall. Hall to Foyer. He scores! The Mariners are back in the series. Alex Olivier Foyer, overtime winner at 14:52. Of sudden death on the power play.